Hey, Vince.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Afterword.
Thanks for welcoming me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. I just want to preemptively welcome. Vince usually takes the opportunity to say thank you when I say welcome to the Afterword.
But what about Kirsten?
I mean, Kirsten is also welcome to the Afterword.
I felt kind of left out, if we're going to be honest there.
Hey, y'all.
What about
Welcome to the Afterword. If you don't know, so y'all is kind of the normal Southern thing. When you get to East Tennessee, like the Georgia-Tennessee border, they say Ewans. It's
but
like,
not that not that
like
pronounced.
Ewans.
Yens.
Yeah. Ewans, which is, it threw me off the first time, and I'm from the South anyway. I am
And
Rex.
welcome to Betty, too.
Also welcome to Betty.
Yeah, whoa.
Yeah. There's so much shade already. All right. No, welcome to the Afterword. This podcast exists to look back at the sermon passage from the prior Sunday. And you know what? Lucky you. We actually recorded this one already, and then the file was unusable. And so now we're here back. And
This one's going to be so much better.
So much better. Kirsten said we should print out a transcript of the bad audio and that I should just voice act everybody.
I did. I still stand by that. I feel like that was an excellent suggestion.
Can we hear some of the voices, how you would do them?
Oh, sure.
Can we put you on the spot right now?
That can be today's intro question.
That could be today's intro. If you had to do a voice of someone else in the room for a day, who would you? No. So Betty is here with us. This is Betty's last full week in Fort Collins, which is wild. Betty, if you don't know, if you're brand new here, is heading to Japan very soon. When are you heading out?
I head out on April 21st, so less
6
than a
days.
week.
6 days.
Yeah.
And you have like visa in hand.
Visa is in hand.
You could
now.
really go anytime if you wanted to.
I really could.
Yeah, you could leave from here and just go to the airport. And
I could.
She leaves the day after her birthday. So just keep that in mind, everyone who's listening.
Give her a hug on Sunday.
Yeah.
That's right. Give her a bunch of stuff that is really big and cumbersome.
Yeah, that you want her to take to Japan
exactly.
with you.
Yeah, my friend offered to gift me an axe that he made, so that would be perfect.
Yeah, that's the spirit. Think in that direction.
I mean, you can put that in your checked luggage.
Yeah,
so I think
it's
you should.
not heavy at all.
Was it a samurai axe?
What does that even mean?
Yes.
One of those.
That would be fine. They would be like, come on in.
Yeah.
You're right.
Hey, quickly. Since it is Betty's last Afterword for a while, and she used to kind of produce this thing and come up with a lot of intro questions, I thought it only fair that Betty should come up with the last intro question while she's stateside.
Wait, so I actually get to use my intro question? It just didn't seem like it was
regrettably, you can ask whatever you want right now.
You get to ask it.
Okay.
As long as it doesn't involve something coming out of someone's belly button.
Don't worry. Not this time.
We are worried.
If you could have a podcast or a YouTube channel, which one would you choose? And what kind of content would you put on it?
Well, in the first time we did this, it was a music video. And I said I would have Friends Are Friends Forever by Michael W. Smith playing while I ate an In-N-Out burger. And I think my YouTube channel would probably be the same thing.
Just that
be
video.
Me eating an In-N-Out burger.
Different places that Rex has eaten an In-N-Out burger.
Different places. It's all at In-N-Out, but just different cities. And it's always a different Michael W. Smith song in this context. So.
I mean, he's still producing music, so you probably have a lot of songs you could choose from.
There's a lot of material.
Really, it's Rex's way of getting more In-N-Out burgers. That's mostly it.
Rex slowly gets a little fatter every single
Smitty,
time.
could you keep putting out songs so Rex can eat burgers?
It maybe it's just like a once a week post.
That's probably good. Yeah, once a week.
It might be too excessive if you did more than that.
Do you have an answer, Betty?
It's hard to narrow it down because there's a few different ways I could go. Definitely a YouTube channel, which I already do have. And I already have vlogs on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Smash that button.
Smash that
Ring
like
that
button.
bell.
But in the similar vein of what you were saying, Rex, my friend and I have this dream where we go to Costco and eat hot dogs dressed as hot dogs and interview people like as we eat hot dogs together.
Is it going to be called like the Hot Dog Cannibals?
No, well, we actually already have an Instagram that has nothing on it that's called Glizzy's on the Go, and that's probably what it would be.
Wow.
So
Why
lots of ideas.
Why is a hot dog called a glizzy?
Let's not go there.
Yeah.
I have nothing. I mean, the first thing that came to mind was just videos of Mike, my dog.
I'd watch those.
That would work.
He's
live stream 24/7. This is Mike.
I have a friend named Tom McGregor, and they moved to Seattle where we were before, and they had a dog, and his name was Mucho Mas. And they liked him a lot, but he wasn't a very good dog. And so when they got there, they decided they were going to rehome him. They gave him to someone who lived in like Northern California, and then found out like a year later that the people they gave him to had made a YouTube channel about the dog, and he had like a celebrity following.
Whoa.
So they enabled that by
That's amazing.
getting rid of their dog.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
you too can get rid of your dog. That's the moral of this dog story.
I don't want to get rid of Mike, but
There's one we have that we'd get rid of.
Steve.
It's not Mike, but it's one of them.
Hope he's not listening.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe just videos of Mike because he makes us laugh a lot.
I'd watch those in Japan.
Yeah. Okay.
I have no idea. The only thing that comes to mind is probably not anything that anybody wants to hear. It'd be a podcast about the way I think things should be.
Are you sure your dad could co-host
I was
that?
going to say you and your dad on that show together.
My dad and I'll just sit down and say, "Well, how do you think this should go?" Well, I'm glad you asked me.
I feel like you could do something with woodworking,
Yeah.
like where you don't talk at all and you just make stuff.
Yeah.
I think people would watch that.
Oh,
yeah, like a lathing
Yeah.
in slow motion.
Slow motion.
There are plenty of
Slow-mo.
people out there that do stuff like that.
Mhm.
All right.
And you could
Oh,
just
so
be the
that's
best.
pro-
No,
that's
you
pro-
could be the
original.
best.
That's probably a way better idea.
You can
than
do
what I
that
had.
while you talk about the way you think things should be.
Well, Betty, I got to be honest. That question went way better than I think all of us thought it would. So great
Yeah.
job.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
good job.
Thank you.
I'm-
See,
That
I
was
have
a
great intro
strong
questions.
exit. It's
Thank
a
you.
strong
Yeah.
exit.
Thank you.
was.
I'm not always this strong.
No, they're
You
not.
know,
Let's
you're
just
putting-
finish this podcast now. Play the outro music.
Yeah. Well, hey, last Sunday we went into the end of Luke chapter 4. It's the beginning of Jesus' ministry, other than the teaching that he did in his hometown. So let me read. It's verses 31 through 44. Let me read this for us, and then we can talk about it a bit. I should say, after we do this, we ask the same 3 questions every week, and that's: is there any context here that needs to be added or could be added? Is there anything that we noticed for the first time? The second question is, what's God like according to this text? And the third is, what do we do with it? How do we apply this? Okay, so this is Luke chapter 4, verse 31. It says, "And he went down to Capernaum, a city of Galilee, and he was teaching them on the Sabbath. And they were astonished at his teaching, for his word possessed authority. And in the synagogue there was a man who had the spirit of an unclean demon, and he cried out with a loud voice, 'Ha! What have you to do with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God.' But Jesus rebuked him, saying, 'Be silent and come out of him.' And when the demon had thrown him down in their midst, he came out of him, having done him no harm. And they were all amazed and said to one another, 'What is this word? For with authority and power he commands the unclean spirits, and they come out.' And reports about him went out into every place in the surrounding region. And he arose and left the synagogue and entered Simon's house. Now Simon's mother-in-law was ill with a high fever, and they appealed to him on her behalf. And he stood over her and rebuked the fever, and it left her. And immediately she rose and began to serve them. Now when the sun was setting, all those who had any who were sick with various diseases brought them to him. And he laid his hands on every one of them and healed them. And demons also came out of many, crying, 'You are the Son of God.' But he rebuked them and would not allow them to speak, because they knew that he was the Christ. And when it was day, he departed and went into a desolate place. And the people sought him and came to him, and would have kept him from leaving them. But he said to them, 'I must preach the good news of the kingdom of God to the other towns as well, for I was sent for this purpose.' And he was preaching in the synagogues of Judea." And this is God's word. Vince, give us a couple sentence flyover of where you went here.
Yeah, this is Jesus' first go at ministry. We've seen things leading up to this. He's taught some, but we haven't seen any of the things, the authority that he has as the Son of God yet. And so, as he's teaching, he is also showing authority in a lot of different ways. So there's authority in his teaching. Really, this whole passage is about the authority of Jesus over all things. He has authority in his teaching. The people were amazed, astonished at his teaching. The words that he had authority over the demon, the unclean spirit that he brought out of the man with a word. And he has authority over illness. Peter's mother-in-law, he healed her with a word, and then kind of a collection of all of them. The people began bringing him all of their different sick friends, and he healed them and cast out demons from them. And then we see authority, Jesus' authority over even his own mission, that he can't be held by what the people want of him, but he will do what it is God has sent him to do. So it's really about the authority of Jesus as he's stepping into what God has called him to be.
Yeah. Before we get going on what we noticed, what could be added to this to kind of show some more meaning, we did get a question from someone concerning this, and it said, "I really resonated with the heart picture of God's sovereign authority. Our heads get it, but not so much our hearts. That is belief, which raises a number of questions. How does faith interplay with God's sovereign authority? When my prayers are not answered, is it because I don't have enough faith? If so, how do I get enough faith? And how much faith is enough? Jesus said, like a mustard seed, which could move mountains. I don't want to move mountains, but many of my prayers seem smaller and less dramatic than moving a mountain. So does this mean I have faith smaller than a mustard seed? Or if faith is not the issue, what other issues come into play when my good, God-willed prayers, like the salvation of a family member, are not answered?"
We could spend 6 days talking about that. And
I think so.
From a variety of different angles. It's a great question.
I think the first thing that comes to mind regarding the mustard seed is just the object of our faith. And I think in that parable, Jesus is saying that the object is more important than the quantity of our faith. And so the mustard seed is very tiny, but even the smallest amount of faith, if the object of our faith is God, is sufficient. And so, I think we can look throughout Scripture and know that without faith, it's impossible to please God. We can know that we don't have because we don't ask. But I also know that if we have even the tiniest amount of faith, the object of our faith is the most important thing. It's not the size that matters.
Yeah, that's good. I think a couple things I would point out is that our prayers are not answered necessarily because of the amount of faith we have. Meaning, we could have faith that's significant amounts of faith, and still, and we see in the last verses, if it doesn't line up with what the plan of God is, the will of God is, the mission of what Jesus is about, then it's not in conjunction with our faith or out of step with our faith. It's that God had another plan. And where I go with this is we see Jesus praying before he's crucified. He prays, and I would think we would all, if we took a vote, say that Jesus has a good amount of faith.
Yeah.
We see him praying and asking the Father that if there's another way that it would be so. So and that prayer was not answered in that way. So we can't say it was a lack of faith that caused that, but it was just not in the plan of God. And we see Paul too, who I think we would all say had an extreme amount of faith, prayed over and over 3 times that this thorn, whatever that was, would be removed. And the answer to that from Jesus was no, but his grace is sufficient to make him strong, powerful in his weakness. So I don't think we can line up, well, if I have enough, it's not a formula. If I have enough faith, then God answers my prayers in the ways that I want. If I don't have faith, maybe he won't. It's not a formula like that, but it's the plan of God, and we're called to have faith and increasing amounts of it.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like you said, faith isn't really like a currency. It's not. We don't take a bunch of tickets and win the answer to the prayer behind the counter at the arcade. It's more about it being in line with God's will. And it's weird. I think that brings up other confusing questions. The questioner here asks like good things.
Yeah.
Like someone you love coming to know Jesus, or someone you love being healed, or other things that it seem like a no-brainer. But I think the passage it speaks to this a little bit. Doesn't give like a good cool, now I understand. But even at the very end of this passage, they came to him and they said, Jesus, stay here.
Right.
And there's more healing to be done. There's that. And this is paralleled in other places where the disciples find him and they say, hey, where'd you go? There's people to heal. There's ministry to be done. And Jesus says, I must go other places.
Mm-hmm.
He has a will. So we are it's weird how prayer interacts with God's will, I think. And I think that kind of brings up
It's confusing.
a question.
It can be confusing.
It can be very confusing because at the same time, like we are to ask. We are to ask and pray that something happens.
Yeah.
Sometimes the answer is no, and that's weird. That's hard. It doesn't feel good, but that's just sometimes the way it is.
Yeah, we wrestled for a long time with Ezra's sickness. In our minds, there would be more honor shown to God in the healing of our son than in not healing him. And so that we wrestled with, well, how does this, but somehow it does. We don't know how. We may never know the answer to that. In some way, because this was the plan of God, this is what brings God more honor. And that's extremely confusing.
Yeah, I mean, I think a thing that I've had to work through and wrestle with, even in that thought, is that, like, nowhere in Scripture does it say that God has promised to heal us here on earth, but God has promised to hold those who are His. And so, as I've thought about it, I've thought maybe what obviously brought God more honor, more glory, was the fact that He held Ezra's faith to the very end, and that's what He's promised to do. Whereas all of us will face death, all of us are going to taste the effects of sin because it's destroyed the world. But God is glorified when He is true to what He has promised, and what He has promised is to hold those who are His. And so, I think even in some of these things, like from a human perspective, from a very limited understanding, healing would bring God the most glory. But I think having to kind of rework and understand that probably what brings God the most glory is being true to what He has promised, which is holding those who are His.
Yeah. And I think everyone, this sounds harsh or curt or whatever, everyone Jesus healed in this passage died again. Even like Lazarus was raised from the dead, and he died again. What Jesus came for, like, that's a taste of the new creation that Jesus brought, the kingdom coming. But that wasn't the whole primary point. It wasn't just a humanitarian mission that Jesus went on. And it's similar now, like what God is doing is making all things new and pointing us toward that new creation. So while healing can happen and it can be a gift and we should pray for it, we should ask for it. I think, and same thing like with these other prayers, like we should ask for these things. There's a sense in which, like, God is about what He's about. He's about the basically the reconciliation of all things, the making all things new when He returns.
I've always felt really bad for Lazarus as I think about it, because I'm like, man, he tasted death like twice.
Yeah.
And that's not, I mean, it's amazing from our perspective that God raised him from the dead, but I'm like, man, he had to go through the dying process 2 times, which is got to be terrible. But I don't know, anytime God does heal, like, it is a temporary miracle. Like, it's a temporary fix to an eternal problem that we have, and that everyone will face death. And so I think there's probably some cynicism in my heart, but I think I do pray for healing. But I think I struggle, like what you talked about on Sunday, Vince, with actually believing God is going to do it. And so, I think there's a lack of faith there. But so I think more than anything, what it does for me is it brings me to a point of confessing that I do lack faith that God is actually going to heal. I don't doubt that He's able to. I do doubt that He's willing. And so maybe that's where my struggle of faith comes in.
It's interesting to hear us like talking through this again, because between our 2 recording times, I literally had this question come up with a relative who is not a Christian, but was asking about like healing for my mom. And it was like, is it just because like you guys don't believe enough that like she could be healed, or like haven't like believed fully that like, or have the right faith that like God could heal her? And it was like so interesting that came up. And now thinking through this, I'm like, oh wow, we were literally talking about this on Monday. But I think like a lot of the core of that question was, I don't want me thinking I don't have enough faith to become what you were saying, Vince, like a formula. I know I'm tempted to make things formulaic, but also like to believe that therefore, if I do these things, then I have influence over God. And I feel like that was like a lot of the conversation I was having yesterday with this person, was how our faith, or just like in things in general, like how we can influence God and his will. And that's not what we can do. We don't have the power to do that. And it's tempting to think that if we do something a certain way, then we will. So anyway, I enjoyed just listening to this again. I was like, wow, this was a relevant conversation that just was had. Maybe I should send this to her. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, that may be good. It is the reality of life. I mean, these are real conversations. This is where it gets, it can be confusing and tricky to navigate, that we have a God. In this passage, we see Jesus has authority over all things. And we look at a passage like this and think, well, of course he would heal Peter's mother. And of course he would drive the demons away. Of course he would do that. But there are other places where he does not. And we experience that too. We see people who have been healed and been restored, or been, brought freedom to their life. And we've also seen the opposite, where people are not healed. That's confusing. So this is a real conversation. This isn't something theoretical.
It's a little bit of a rabbit trail, but I think it's interesting. I think it's Acts 4, maybe, where Peter encounters the lame man standing on the steps of the temple. He's not standing; he's sitting down because he's lame. But it says that the man had been laying there for, I think it's 40 years. And if you kind of dream a little bit, there was only one temple, and Jesus was often at the temple. And so there's a high probability that Jesus saw that man, walked past that man, and he was probably one of many lame people there, and Jesus didn't heal him. So he didn't heal everyone that he encountered, and yet this man was healed however many years later after Jesus had ascended. And it was kind of like the kickoff to Peter's ministry and the beginning of the church. And so also understanding, like, we don't understand what God has planned for the future. We don't understand what he's up to. And so, I've kind of speculated that maybe that man felt passed over or felt overlooked by Jesus, if Jesus did see him and not heal him. And yet he had other plans for him that involved his healing. And so, and not to say everybody's going to experience healing here on earth, but to say God does have plans for these things that we can't even begin to fathom or comprehend.
Yeah, and I think that probably resonates with a lot of people in our own church. I mean, I know so many people in our own church who have struggled for years and years and years with chronic pain or illness or things that are just hanging on. And those things, as confusing as they are not outside of what God is up to. And that's way easier to sit in this room and say that than it is to believe in the middle of that. But yeah, there are things that all these things we are experiencing are not outside of the authority and power of Jesus. So in some way, he has something for us in it.
But can be deeply discouraging and confusing, because even as like a parent, if my kids are suffering, like, I do anything I can to try to help remove that suffering from them. And of course, that's a very short perspective. It's not always a long-term perspective, but it's painful to know that God has authority over all things, and a piece of that authority is allowing his kids to suffer.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Sure.
It is. I don't know. So I might cut this out. This morning, I got here later than I wanted to because Naomi had a splinter in her foot. And with Naomi, I'm sitting here. I am doing my will on her, trying to get the splinter out of her foot,
which always goes well. By the way,
but that's what I'm saying though. Like she can't, from her perspective where she is, she can't comprehend what's happening fully. Even if I'm saying, hey, this is for your good. Like I'm not trying to hurt you. We have to do this. There's a certain amount of pain she must go through in order to make this good thing happen. And that's pithy. That might be like a pithy analog to some other stuff. But we've been guaranteed basically that all that's left for us this side of the cross as followers of Jesus is mercy. God's there's no more wrath to pour out on us. There's no more punishment for sin. That was all carried out on Jesus. So what's left for us is mercy. And sometimes that mercy is severe, sometimes it hurts. And again, that's a sentence that might hit somebody's ears and might be offensive or painful. And I'm not trying to do that. I'm just saying, like, if we had the mind of God, we might understand. But I think I don't know, for some of it, some suffering, it's like, even if you had an answer for something, like why this happened here on this side of eternity, that might not make it better.
Yeah, I don't know that we'd be satisfied.
No.
I think that even
No.
if we could understand what God was up to, it wouldn't necessarily feel like it was enough, or feel like the reasoning made sense or was worth the suffering that we endured.
Yeah, totally. Okay, one more thing I want to talk about as we're talking kind of about this text again. That covered a lot of ground. Thank you, question asker, who will remain anonymous. That was good conversation. There's a lot more we could say about that. We can keep talking. Vince, you specifically, I mean, obviously it's in the passage here. We talked about demons here, about spiritual forces of evil being present among us. I think in our context, it's easy to think that we're past that, if that makes sense. Think that, like, that's something that's very primitive. We have an explanation for all these things. Here we see, though, Jesus healing a demon, talking about demons, and you talked about demonic activity here. Is there anything you'd want to add for our church as they're listening to this?
Yeah, I don't know if it's I'll talk a little bit about it. I brought up on Sunday the 1 Peter passage where he says that we're to be sober-minded, and the other word is gone from my head. Sober-minded and watchful. Yeah, be watchful and sober-minded. And I think there's a couple ways to look at that. One is to just always be looking for demonic activity. And I would say that what that does is it puts more power in the hands of the enemy than is actually there.
Yeah.
At the same time, I wouldn't say then the fix to that is, well, then don't be looking for it, because I think that also it puts us in a place of being irresponsible, of not understanding that there's a spiritual battle. I mean, our enemy wants nothing more than to destroy and devour us. And so to not be aware that that's happening is irresponsible. And so, and it is, I mentioned this on Sunday, again, not to out anyone, but we've had multiple situations over the last couple of years where it does seem that there's some spiritually dark things going on in people, in couples, and marriages, in our church, and we've maybe experienced some of those things as well, where it's a reality. And so I guess that would be my encouragement, to consider how can I be watchful and mindful and sober-minded that this is a reality, that the enemy does want to destroy anything that Jesus may be up to, and at the same time not give so much credence to it that our eyes are not fixed on Jesus as the one.
That seems like a hard balance, because I do think you can either sensationalize almost, where I think it's Lewis says the demon behind every bush.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about, like, I didn't get the parking space I wanted. That's a demon. In the other ditch, which I think is more common in our circles, in our tradition, in our area of the world, even, is there's 17 other explanations that we could probably convince ourselves as what's happening here. How do people find that balance, do you think? Like, because understanding, like you said, hey, actually spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places are a factor in my life, without being constantly afraid.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to find the balance. I do know, like you said, I think we diagnose it away, we medicate it away, we counsel, therapy it away, when I think there's some good recognition of it. So I don't know what the balance is. I don't know if you all have any ways to look at that, but I don't know what the balance is. I think it's got to be done in those kinds of conversations, have to be done in community and some openness. I think that was one of the reasons I wanted to keep using the language. Eric put me onto this language of, like, we want to open the door for people to express these things, so that we're aware together as a church family. Like, these are things that are happening, and we need to be talking about them so that we can be prayerful and mindful and sober-minded together. knowing that the enemy is on the prowl looking for those he can devour, to not be so mindful of it that our eyes are not fixed on Jesus. I think that's another subtle way the enemy gets after it, is to make us so aware of what he's doing that our eyes are not fixed on who Jesus is and his authority.
I think it has to be keeping our eyes, like you said, fixed on Jesus, but also on the end, and knowing that the battle has been won. Like there is victory and that Jesus is victorious, but we're still in the midst of a battle. Like we know the end of the story, but we're in the midst of a war. And so understanding that, like, as I think back, like towards like World War II or something like that, it wasn't that the Allies won every single battle, that they lost a lot of battles, and there were a lot of ups and downs and uncertainties about who was going to win. And yet ultimately they ended up winning. And so we know the end. We know that Jesus has already won. We know he's victorious. But I think the enemy is delusional, and he wants to destroy anything that Jesus would do. And so he keeps fighting and keeps fighting and keeps going. And so I think keeping our eyes fixed on the end, knowing that Jesus is victorious, but also recognizing that we are in the midst of a very real war. And even though we know the end, our enemy is going to keep going to try to flip the script, even though that can't happen.
Yeah.
I don't have anything to add. I was going to ask that question because I feel like I've been someone who's very influenced by our culture and like demonic activity is only something of the past or only something that's present in other cultures. And I know that's not true. And I know it's just really how we approach it is so different. So I feel like I have a lot of questions around it. So I'm listening.
Yeah, no, just very simply, I think it's wise for us to see where the enemy may be sneaking in, but we have to, going back to this passage, we have to see that Jesus is powerful and authoritative over all of these things.
Yeah.
So we, like you said, Kirsten, we know the winner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What's God like according to this text?
I think if I were to give kind of the Christian-y word, I would say he's mysterious. There's mystery. I think if I were to give more of a fleshly term, I would say he's confusing. That there is mystery involved with God. We cannot understand his ways. We don't understand often what he's up to. And yet when you're on the receiving end of that and you're mostly in the dark, it feels very confusing about why he chooses to do what he does and allow what he does. So, I think there's mystery and confusion all mixed up together.
You brought this up on Sunday, Vince, and I don't think I would have thought of it on my own, but I am really struck by the compassion of Jesus in this text specifically. I feel like zooming out, there's a lot of mystery and confusion that's definitely there, but zooming into this specifically for me, just seeing that he is taking the time to heal these people. And like in verse 40, when the sun was setting, he was still healing those people. And I know myself and my tendencies that when it's getting late or I'm tired, I don't really want to give other people my time, but just beautiful to see how compassionate Christ is and that he desires to do that for these people. He's not doing it out of obligation either. Like that's hard to comprehend, that he isn't sinful like I am, and he's doing this out of pure compassion. And I can't even comprehend that.
Yeah. I think that's where my mind goes to, Betty, that we have a God, Jesus, who is authoritative over all things and still slows relationally to reach out and put hands on people, and shows compassion, kindness toward people. Those two things don't go together often, but that's who Jesus is. So.
Yeah, the fact that he came on this mission to save all of humanity, but he had the time to stop and heal Peter's mother-in-law and, release people from demonic oppression and all of those things. Like he wasn't so so he wasn't self-absorbed at all, and nothing could deter him from his mission, which was much larger than what any of these people understood, and yet he still had the time to engage them in a really tender way.
Yeah, I think Jesus is way less busy than most of us. That's how he comes across. At least he moves slowly. He goes to a lot of parties. He does all that kind of stuff. And, yeah, I think I see this is sort of a bridge to what do we do with this. It was a real prayer of mine this weekend, and reading this passage and then planning liturgy and stuff like that. I want us to be aware of what Jesus is doing now, through his Spirit, through his church. I think there's a tendency to look at this kind of stuff and only put it in the rearview mirror, or only put it like way out in the future when Jesus comes again and again makes all things new, and there's no more weeping or tears or pain or sickness. But I would love for us to recognize Jesus here among us. In Revelation 1, it's a wild book, but John writes that he sees the Son of Man walking amongst the lampstands, and the lampstands there represent the churches. So it's like Jesus is actually present with us now. Like he's walking with us still in what we're going through. So the presence of God, I guess, is how I would see that. But I guess kind of to transition then, how do we apply this? How do we live like Jesus still has authority and he's still present with us now?
I mean, I think calling back what I said a little earlier, being aware of the cynicism or doubt or unbelief that we have in our hearts and being quick to confess that, and then praying as if we had a really robust faith, and praying with expectation, being expectant of what he is able to do, not knowing if he will, but being expectant that he's able to do that. And then having eyes really looking for the way that the Lord is working. I think sometimes, the number of times that I pray for something, just like a kind of one-off quick prayer, and then it's answered, and I don't, thank God, I don't stop to actually consider, oh wait, I prayed for this and it just happened. It's probably a lot more frequent than I'd like to admit. And so I think really fixing our eyes to see what he's up to.
I feel like this is a very timely word as I'm preparing to go to Japan, and that if I'm not trusting in the authority of Jesus, everything I'm stepping into is going to be pointless. Like all things are through him and for him. And if I'm operating from my own strength or think I have authority or influence from my own power, it's pointless. And so I just think really, like, how can I daily believe that and come to the Lord, like desiring to see that, and then also see the example of Jesus here and the compassion that he has for people and the care that he has for people, where I know that I can very quickly get task oriented and not care about people and care more about things I need to do, or view people as tasks, but just to see them in the way that Christ does and to love them and to let that be what I'm doing through the authority of Jesus, and the same Spirit is dwelling in me, and just remembering those things. I'm starting to ramble now, but
that's great. No.
It's a very timely thing to think about, and I don't want to forget this just the moment I get on the plane too.
Yeah. I think for me, this passage, the so what of it is, this year I've been, the sort of word that I've tried to absorb for myself is I want to be more prayerful. And I think about the fact that Jesus has authority over all things, sickness, the spiritual dark places, all the affliction and oppression and all that. And it pushes me into this place of I want to be more prayerful. Immediately, regularly, I want to be more prayerful about going to Jesus to ask for these things. And he may have different answers than I want, but I want to be prayerful. I want to see Jesus heal people in our church and bring them freedom where that's needed. And I want to see it. I think it would be an encouragement to us. And I think it's honoring to him to bring those things to him. So anyway, that's the so what for me.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Betty, you're leaving soon.
I am.
Yeah. Two things. One, we are all immensely proud of you and really excited to watch and see what God does.
Yeah.
Second thing, let's say somebody wants to keep up with your adventures and what God's doing and how to pray for you as you're in Japan. What's the best way for them to do that?
Follow her hot dog
That's it.
Instagram
Yeah,
site.
Yes,
the
Lizzie's
glizzies
on the
and-
go.
yeah.
No, well, first of all, thank you, Rex. Didn't cry this time, so maybe it's a
she
good
did the first
thing
time,
we
yeah.
recorded. And second, if you would like to keep up with what is happening in Japan, I have a newsletter on Epistle, and if you would like to know how to sign up for that, I can send you the information. And if you don't know how to reach out to me, you can go on to Church Center and reach out to me through that, and I can get you set up. But if you know how to reach me, please reach out, and I'd love to add you to that.
But also sign up for Church Center.
Yeah, but also sign up for
That's
Church
the main
Center.
reason I asked. No.
Actually, only reach out to me through Church Center, even if you know my information.
Even if you see her in the next week. Yeah, well, that's amazing, buddy. We're excited to see what happens, and we've seen God's hand in preparing this and preparing you and sending you and opening all these doors quickly and all that, and the faith that it's taken here. And so we'll all be praying for you. We hope you're coming on Sunday. We're gonna pray for Betty.
I plan to
on
be
Sunday.
there.
Yeah, good. That's great. I appreciate that.
Oh, I wasn't going to be
You
there.
weren't going to be there.
We're gonna pray for you whether you're there or not.
Okay.
So
We're going to all circle around you and pray for you.
that's right.
Great. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, hey, next week we start Luke chapter 5. It's
1
just
through 11.
1 through 11. So talking about fishing boats and stuff. So,
Yep.
Anyway,
Fish and chips.
Fish and chips. That's the name of the sermon, actually. We'll serve those. Never mind. I'm not going to go there.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good week.
Adios.